If you're over 70 and you've noticed your legs swelling more than usual, especially around those twisted, bulging veins that seem to get worse with each passing year, I need you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to share with you today. Because there are 5 seemingly innocent habits that millions of people over 70 do every single day, thinking they're either harmless or even helpful, but in reality, these habits are silently making your varicose swelling dramatically worse. And the most alarming part? Some of these habits are actually recommended by well-meaning friends and family members who have no idea they could be doing more harm than good. I'm Dr. Emily Hartwell, and I've spent over 25 years as a vascular specialist, working specifically with patients dealing with chronic venous insufficiency and varicose vein complications. In my career, I've seen thousands of patients walk into my office frustrated, confused, and often in significant discomfort because their leg swelling just keeps getting worse despite what they believed were their best efforts. And time after time, when we dig deeper into their daily routines, we discover these 5 critical habits that are secretly sabotaging their vascular health. Before we dive into these crucial revelations, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, I highly recommend you tap that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you never miss another health tip designed specifically for you. And if you find this video helpful, please drop your questions and video suggestions in the comments below. I personally read every single one, and your feedback helps me create more content that can genuinely help people like you. Now, let me tell you about Margaret, a 73-year-old retired schoolteacher from Portland, Oregon. Margaret came to see me about 8 months ago, and she was absolutely devastated. Her legs had become so swollen that she could barely recognize them as her own. The skin around her ankles had turned a dark brownish color, and she was experiencing constant heaviness and aching that kept her awake at night. Margaret told me she had been doing everything she thought was right. She was drinking plenty of water, she stayed active, and she even wore compression stockings her daughter had bought her from the pharmacy. But despite all her efforts, her condition was deteriorating rapidly. When I reviewed her daily habits in detail, I discovered she was unknowingly committing all 5 of the mistakes I'm about to share with you. Within 3 months of correcting these habits, Margaret's swelling had reduced by nearly 60%. Her skin discoloration had started to fade, and most importantly, she was sleeping through the night without that terrible throbbing pain. Her story is not unique. I've seen these same patterns repeat themselves hundreds of times, which is exactly why I felt compelled to create this video for you today. The first habit that makes varicose swelling dramatically worse is something that might genuinely surprise you. It's the prolonged sitting with legs hanging down, particularly while watching television or reading. Now, I know what you might be thinking. How can sitting be harmful? We're told to rest when our legs are bothering us. But here's what happens inside your body when you sit for extended periods with your feet on the floor or dangling from a chair. When you're in this position, gravity is constantly working against your already weakened vein valves. In healthy veins, tiny one-way valves prevent blood from flowing backward. But when you have varicose veins, these valves are damaged or weakened, meaning blood tends to pool in your lower legs. When you sit with your legs hanging down for hours at a time, you're essentially asking your damaged venous system to fight against gravity with no assistance whatsoever. The blood accumulates in your lower legs, pressure builds up in your veins, and fluid starts leaking into the surrounding tissues, causing that familiar swelling and heaviness. Let me tell you about Robert, a 76-year-old retired accountant from Dallas, Texas. Robert was an avid reader and would spend 4 to 5 hours each afternoon in his favorite recliner, feet flat on the floor, completely absorbed in his books. He loved his reading routine, but he noticed his ankles were becoming increasingly swollen, to the point where his socks were leaving deep indentations in his skin that wouldn't go away for hours. When Robert came to see me, his wife mentioned that he barely moved from that chair all afternoon. Once we addressed this habit, and I taught Robert the proper way to position himself while reading, which I'll explain in just a moment, his ankle swelling decreased significantly within just a few weeks. The solution isn't to stop sitting altogether. That would be unrealistic and unnecessary. Instead, when you sit for extended periods, elevate your legs so they're at least at hip level or higher. Use a footstool, ottoman, or even stack some pillows. If you're in a recliner, make sure it's properly reclined so your legs are elevated above your heart. And here's a crucial detail many people miss. Set a timer on your phone for every 30 to 45 minutes. When that timer goes off, stand up and walk around for just 2 to 3 minutes. This simple movement activates your calf muscles, which act as a natural pump to help push blood back up toward your heart. I remember another patient, William, a 79-year-old retired postal worker from Chicago, Illinois, who had spent his entire career walking and delivering mail. When he retired, he suddenly went from walking miles every day to spending most of his time in his comfortable armchair watching news programs. Within 18 months of retirement, William's legs had developed significant swelling that hadn't existed during his working years. His wife noticed it first, pointing out that his ankles looked puffy by the end of each day. William initially dismissed it as just part of getting older, but when the swelling began causing discomfort and making his shoes difficult to put on, he finally sought help. The transformation in William's case was remarkable once he understood the connection between his sedentary retirement habits and his leg swelling. He started taking 3 short walks per day, elevated his legs during television time, and the improvement was visible within just 2 weeks. If you're still with me and finding this information valuable, I'd love it if you could type a 1 in the comments below, just to let me know you're following along. It really helps me understand what topics resonate with you, and honestly, it encourages me to keep creating these videos. The second habit that's silently worsening your varicose swelling is one that sounds counterintuitive at first. It's wearing compression stockings incorrectly. Now, compression stockings are genuinely one of the most effective non-surgical treatments for varicose veins and venous insufficiency. They work by applying graduated pressure to your legs, with the strongest compression at the ankle and decreasing pressure as the stocking goes up your leg. This design helps push blood upward and prevents it from pooling in your lower extremities. However, here's where so many people go wrong. They either wear the wrong compression level, put them on at the wrong time of day, or wear stockings that don't fit properly. And when compression stockings are used incorrectly, they can actually make your swelling worse instead of better. I'll never forget Dorothy, a 71-year-old grandmother from Minneapolis, Minnesota, who came to my office with legs that were more swollen than when she started wearing compression stockings 6 months earlier. Dorothy was frustrated and confused. Her neighbor had recommended compression stockings, and Dorothy had ordered a pair online that she thought would help. The problem was that Dorothy had purchased knee-high stockings with a compression level of 30 to 40 millimeters of mercury, which is considered firm to extra-firm compression. This level is typically reserved for more severe cases and should only be used under medical guidance. Even more problematic, Dorothy was putting the stockings on in the evening before bed and wearing them overnight. This is the opposite of what you should do. She would then remove them in the morning when her legs were at their least swollen. By the time evening came around and she put them back on, her legs had already accumulated significant swelling throughout the day, and the tight stockings were essentially trapping that fluid in place rather than preventing it from accumulating. The correct approach is to put your compression stockings on first thing in the morning, before you even get out of bed if possible, or immediately after you stand up. This is when your legs are at their least swollen, and the stockings can work effectively to prevent swelling throughout the day. You should remove them at night when you're lying down and gravity is no longer working against you. Additionally, the compression level should be determined by a healthcare provider who can assess your specific situation. For most people with mild to moderate varicose veins, a compression level of 15 to 20 or 20 to 30 millimeters of mercury is appropriate and much more comfortable for daily wear. Another common mistake I see is patients washing their compression stockings improperly or not replacing them frequently enough. These stockings lose their elasticity over time, especially if they're washed in hot water or dried in a dryer. Most compression stockings need to be replaced every 3 to 6 months, depending on how often you wear them and how you care for them. I had a patient named Francis, an 82-year-old retired librarian from Seattle, Washington, who had been wearing the same pair of compression stockings for over 2 years. She couldn't understand why they weren't helping anymore. When I examined the stockings, they had lost nearly all their compression. They were essentially just tight socks at that point, providing minimal therapeutic benefit. Frances was surprised to learn that compression stockings have a lifespan, and once we got her into properly fitting new stockings with the right compression level, she finally experienced the relief she had been seeking for years. But wait, because if you thought that was surprising, the third habit might shock you even more. It's the excessive consumption of sodium, and I'm not just talking about the salt shaker on your dinner table. Most people over 70 are aware that too much salt can raise blood pressure. But what many don't realize is the profound effect sodium has on fluid retention and venous swelling. When you consume excess sodium, your body holds on to water to maintain proper electrolyte balance. This extra fluid has to go somewhere, and guess where it tends to accumulate? That's right, in your lower legs, especially if you already have compromised venous function. For someone with healthy veins, this extra fluid retention might cause mild, barely noticeable swelling. But for someone with varicose veins and venous insufficiency, excess sodium can turn moderate swelling into severe swelling seemingly overnight. Here's where it gets tricky. The salt you add to your food at the table accounts for only about 10 to 15% of your total sodium intake. The real culprit is the hidden sodium in processed foods, restaurant meals, and even foods that don't taste particularly salty. Bread, breakfast cereals, canned soups, deli meats, cheese, and condiments like ketchup and salad dressings can all be surprisingly high in sodium. I want to share the story of Harold, a 78-year-old retired engineer from Phoenix, Arizona. Harold was absolutely convinced that he wasn't eating too much salt. He rarely used the salt shaker, avoided obviously salty foods like chips and pretzels, and considered himself health conscious. But Harold loved his convenience foods. His typical day included instant oatmeal for breakfast, a deli sandwich for lunch, and a frozen dinner in the evening. He also enjoyed canned soup several times a week because it was easy to prepare. When Harold tracked his sodium intake for 1 week using a simple food diary, he was stunned to discover he was consuming over 4,000 milligrams of sodium daily. That's nearly twice the recommended limit of 2,300 milligrams, and significantly higher than the 1,500 milligrams often recommended for people with cardiovascular concerns. Once Harold made targeted changes to reduce his sodium intake, focusing particularly on those hidden sources, his leg swelling decreased noticeably within 10 days. He told me it was like someone had released a valve and let all that extra fluid drain away. What Harold found most helpful was learning to read nutrition labels. He was shocked to discover that a single serving of his favorite canned soup contained over 800 milligrams of sodium, and that the instant oatmeal packets he ate each morning had nearly 300 milligrams per packet. By switching to plain oatmeal that he flavored himself, choosing low-sodium soup options, and gradually reducing his reliance on processed foods, Harold was able to cut his sodium intake in half without feeling deprived. He even discovered that his food tasted better once his taste buds adjusted to lower sodium levels. I also want to mention that potassium-rich foods like bananas, sweet potatoes, and leafy greens can help counterbalance sodium's effects on fluid retention. Many of my patients find that increasing their potassium intake alongside reducing sodium produces even better results. Now, if you've been following along and have experienced any of these situations yourself, I want you to comment below and let me know which habit surprised you the most. Your engagement helps this video reach more people who might benefit from this information. The fourth habit that significantly worsens varicose swelling is one that many people actually think is good for their legs. It's the prolonged standing in one position, especially on hard surfaces. I see this frequently in patients who have heard that sitting is bad for their veins, so they swing to the opposite extreme and stand for hours without moving. Standing in one place, particularly on concrete, tile, or other hard surfaces, creates similar problems to prolonged sitting. When you stand still, your calf muscles aren't contracting and relaxing the way they do when you walk. This means the natural muscle pump that helps push blood back up to your heart isn't being activated. Blood pools in your lower legs, pressure increases in your already compromised veins, and swelling worsens. I treated a remarkable woman named Eleanor, an 81-year-old from Sacramento, California, who had been a competitive ballroom dancer in her younger years. Eleanor still loved to cook elaborate meals for her family, and she would often spend 3 to 4 hours standing at her kitchen counter preparing dinner. She stood on a beautiful but unforgiving tile floor, and she noticed her legs would be enormously swollen by the time she sat down to eat. Eleanor had made the connection that her swelling was worse on days she cooked, but she assumed it was just something she had to accept if she wanted to continue doing what she loved. What she didn't realize was that simple modifications could make an enormous difference. We got Eleanor an anti-fatigue mat for her kitchen, which provides cushioning and encourages subtle movements in the legs. We also taught her to take brief walking breaks every 20 minutes, even if it was just walking to another room and back. She started doing simple calf raises while standing at the counter, lifting her heels off the ground, and then lowering them back down in sets of 10. These small changes allowed Eleanor to continue her cooking hobby while dramatically reducing the swelling she experienced. The key principle here is movement. Your calf muscles are often called your second heart because of their crucial role in pumping blood back toward your chest. But they can only perform this function when they're moving. If you must stand for extended periods, shift your weight from foot to foot, do periodic calf raises, walk in place, or take short walking breaks. Standing on a cushioned mat also helps because the softer surface encourages more micro-movements in your feet and legs. I should mention that certain occupations and hobbies put people at higher risk for this problem. I've treated many patients who spend hours standing at craft tables, workshop benches, or in gardens without realizing the cumulative effect on their venous system. A gentleman named George, a 77-year-old retired carpenter from Denver, Colorado, continued woodworking as a hobby in his garage workshop. He would spend entire afternoons standing at his workbench, focused so intently on his projects that hours would pass without him moving more than a few steps. George developed severe swelling that he initially attributed to his previous career, not realizing his current hobby was the real culprit. We worked together to redesign his workshop flow so he had reasons to move around more frequently. He placed different tools at different stations, requiring him to walk back and forth. He set up a stool for tasks that could be done sitting. And he started wearing compression stockings during his workshop sessions. These modifications allowed George to continue his beloved hobby while protecting his vascular health. We've reached the fifth and final habit. And honestly, this might be the most important one of all, because it affects how your body manages fluid at the most fundamental level. This habit is inadequate water intake, combined with excessive consumption of dehydrating beverages like coffee and alcohol. I know this might seem contradictory at first. If swelling is caused by fluid accumulation, why would drinking more water help? It's a question I get asked all the time, and the answer lies in how your body regulates its internal fluid balance. When you're chronically dehydrated, even mildly, your body goes into fluid conservation mode. Your kidneys start holding onto water and sodium rather than excreting them efficiently. Paradoxically, this conservation response actually leads to more fluid retention and more swelling. Additionally, when you're dehydrated, your blood becomes slightly thicker and more viscous, making it harder to circulate efficiently through your already compromised venous system. Coffee and alcohol compound this problem because they have diuretic effects, meaning they cause your body to excrete more water through urination. If you drink several cups of coffee throughout the day without compensating with adequate water intake, you can end up in a mild but chronic state of dehydration that perpetuates your swelling. Let me tell you about Patricia, a 74-year-old retired nurse from Boston, Massachusetts. Patricia knew about the importance of hydration from her medical background, but she had developed a habit of drinking coffee throughout the morning, and then a glass of wine or two with dinner. She didn't particularly enjoy plain water, so she rarely drank it. Patricia's legs were consistently swollen, and she had noticed the problem getting progressively worse over the past 2 years. When we discussed her fluid intake, Patricia realized she was drinking about 4 cups of coffee daily and having wine most evenings. But her actual water consumption was minimal. She estimated she drank maybe 1 or 2 glasses of water on a good day. We worked together to develop a hydration strategy that worked for her lifestyle. She started each morning with a full glass of water before her first cup of coffee. She kept a water bottle at her side throughout the day and set hourly reminders on her phone to take a few sips. She didn't eliminate coffee or wine entirely, but she made sure to match each cup of coffee with a glass of water. Within 3 weeks of implementing these changes, Patricia reported that her legs felt noticeably lighter. The deep indentations from her socks had diminished, and she was able to wear shoes that had become too tight over the past several months. She was amazed that something as simple as drinking more water could have such a profound effect. The general guideline for water intake is approximately 8 glasses or about 2 liters per day, but individual needs vary based on body size, activity level, climate, and other factors. For people with venous insufficiency and varicose swelling, adequate hydration is even more important. Pay attention to the color of your urine as a simple indicator. Pale yellow suggests adequate hydration, while dark yellow indicates you need to drink more. Now, I want to bring all of this together with a story that illustrates what can happen when someone addresses all 5 habits simultaneously. Earlier, I mentioned Margaret, the retired school teacher from Portland. When Margaret first came to see me, she was committing every single one of these 5 mistakes. She sat for hours watching television with her feet on the floor. She wore compression stockings incorrectly, putting them on in the evening rather than the morning. Her diet was high in hidden sodium from processed foods. She stood for long periods while gardening without taking movement breaks. And she drank minimal water while consuming multiple cups of coffee daily. Over the course of 3 months, Margaret systematically addressed each of these habits. She got an adjustable recliner that properly elevated her legs while watching television and set timers to remind herself to walk around. She got properly fitted compression stockings from a medical supply store and learned to put them on first thing in the morning. She started reading food labels and made simple substitutions to reduce her sodium intake. She invested in a comfortable kneeling pad for gardening and started taking regular breaks to walk around her yard. And she began carrying a water bottle with her throughout the day, making sure to drink plenty of water before and after her coffee. The transformation was remarkable. Margaret's legs, which had been so swollen she could barely see her ankle bones, returned to a much more normal appearance. The brownish discoloration around her ankles started to fade. She was sleeping through the night without pain for the first time in years. And perhaps most importantly, Margaret felt empowered. She understood what was happening in her body and had concrete tools to manage her condition. This is what I want for you as well. Understanding these 5 habits and making the appropriate changes doesn't require expensive treatments or drastic lifestyle overhauls. It simply requires awareness and consistent attention to how you're treating your body throughout the day. Let me summarize the key points we've covered today so you have a clear action plan. First, avoid prolonged sitting with legs down. When you sit for extended periods, elevate your legs and take walking breaks every 30 to 45 minutes. Second, use compression stockings correctly. Put them on first thing in the morning when your legs are least swollen, and make sure you have the right compression level for your needs, ideally determined with guidance from a healthcare provider. Third, monitor your sodium intake. Pay special attention to hidden sodium in processed foods, and aim to keep your daily intake below 2,300 milligrams. Fourth, avoid prolonged standing in one position. If you must stand for long periods, use cushioned mats, take movement breaks, and do calf exercises to activate your muscle pump. Fifth, stay adequately hydrated. Drink plenty of water throughout the day, and be mindful that coffee and alcohol can contribute to dehydration. If you're watching this and feeling overwhelmed, please remember that you don't have to change everything at once. Start with one habit that seems most manageable for you. Focus on that for a week or two until it becomes second nature, and then move on to the next one. Small, consistent changes add up to significant improvements over time. I also want to emphasize something extremely important. While these habit modifications can make a tremendous difference in managing varicose swelling, they are not a substitute for proper medical evaluation and treatment. If you're experiencing significant leg swelling, skin changes, pain, or if you notice any sudden worsening of your symptoms, please consult with a healthcare provider. There are many effective treatment options available for varicose veins and chronic venous insufficiency, and a vascular specialist can help determine the best approach for your individual situation. Your legs have carried you through decades of life, and they deserve care and attention in return. By understanding how these common habits affect your venous health and making thoughtful adjustments to your daily routine, you can significantly reduce swelling, minimize discomfort, and maintain better quality of life as you age. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. If you found this information helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with anyone you know who might be struggling with varicose swelling. Your support helps this channel grow and allows me to continue creating educational content for people who need it most. Drop your comments and questions below. I genuinely want to hear from you. What habit surprised you the most? Have you been making any of these mistakes without realizing it? What changes are you planning to make? Let's continue this conversation, because your health journey doesn't end when this video does. Until next time, take care of those legs and take care of yourself. I'm Dr. Emily Hartwell, and I'll see you in the next video.